Welcome back to Educator.com. Today's lesson is on setting up your environment. The goal of this lesson is we want to get your environment set up so you're using the same Ruby version as us, and you have everything in sync. So you have all the same tools I'm using. So the first thing we want to look at is rubylang.org. This has the core Ruby code, the source code, and we're going to be using 193 for all our lessons. If you're on a Mac, you might see 187 already installed by default, but you should go through the steps in this lesson to get you set up with 193. So you don't see any issues as you're developing. So first, let's go ahead and just go to that website. Let's go to rubylang.org. Check it out. So if you go here, we're at rubylang.org. You'll notice that it has a lot of documentation information about it, and it'll give you a little gist of what Ruby is. And I'll show you some code actually for a class there. What they do here is they give you a lot of versions from latest to oldest. So you'll see it says, oh, 193 patch 327 is released. That's the latest one. And you can go here and you can actually see the change log and see what bugs have been fixed. So if I go ahead and click the change log, you'll see that it actually gave you a whole list of the things that have been fixed for this version. And then you can go ahead and check that out if you want, but I think most likely you just want to get the most stable one. So let's show you how to do that. The main thing here, you see all this news. The main thing here is you want to look at this download Ruby button. It is downloads. So you click download Ruby. I'll tell you the stable version is 193, and it'll tell you 3 ways of installing Ruby. So going through these ways, one's compiling it from source. Another is using a third-party tool to install Ruby, and we're going to go through each of these, and using a package management system. So one third-party tool you use is you can use RVM, and we're going to go over that. So first, compiling Ruby by source. You can just download this link here. That'll get you the latest one. It's tar and gzipped. So you know how to install source. Go ahead and just download it, compile it. But we are going to go through setting up with RVM. So you might want to take a look at that before you just build from source. And that's the next one they say here, is use a third-party tool. And this RVM is very popular. It's called Ruby Version Manager. And it makes it so installing Ruby is easy, plus developing it is easy, because I can use multiple versions of Ruby as I'm developing. It's available for Mac OS, Linux, or any Unix operating system. And Windows does have a version called Pick that does kind of like the similar thing. It's very easy to install. Use this curl command. And then there's Ruby installer. That's for Windows, to install the Ruby version on Windows. And then they have packages. Linux, you can use apt-get to install it. Also, there's a package management called pacman for the Arch Linux system. Mac OS X, you can do brew install Ruby. Brew is also another package. And then if you're looking at Solaris or Open Indiana, you can use this package install runtime /Ruby 1.8. And then there's also other implementations of Ruby. We're not going to get into those, but it's good to know that you have them there, because You have JRuby for a Java virtual machine, Mac Ruby to run Mac OS code, Iron Ruby for .NET. Okay, so that's rubylang.org for you. Mostly build it from source, that's what it's used for, but we're going to go a different route. Let's go ahead and look deeper in this Ruby installer for your Windows folks. They make it very easy for you. So I'm at rubyinstaller.org here. They have a 1.8.7 version, a 1.9.3. You're going to get the 1.9.3 version. You click the download button here. Just choose this top one here as executable. You download it, you get executable, you double click, you install it. It'll get you all set up with Ruby. You also have a lot of information here about documentation for it. You can go to this help button, and it has a whole wiki of information to help you set it up as well if you have issues. But double click, you're set up, ready to go. And Mac OS X and Linux installation, we already saw it. You go to Ruby Lang, you can install it through source. Install it through the package management system. But we're going to do it differently. We're going to use a combination of Brew and RVM. So we're going to, this is my recommended route. We're going to use Brew and RVM to do that. Setting it up with a Debian Linux, you can just go ahead and just use sudo apt-get install Ruby 1.9.3. It'll get your version set up for that. And so we're going to go deep dive right into doing it with Homebrew. Now, we've got it for Debian. We have it set up for Windows. We're going to structure it for the Mac OS, because a lot of my lessons will be on the Mac OS X platform. So let's see if we can get you to mimic the same behavior on your setup right now. So the first thing we want to do is we want to install Homebrew on your Mac machine. Just go to this link over here, and what we're first going to do is we're going to install Brew. It's a one-line command. Then we want to run brew update, and then you want to install a library called brew install libksba. So actually, let me remind you that this library here, you probably want to take notes on this too, but this one is required because you're installing a Ruby 1.9.3. This is required for Ruby 1.9.3. What Brew Update's going to do is that's going to actually update the Homebrew to make sure it's on all the latest system files. So you always want to run that next after you install the Brew. So let's go ahead and look at the browser to see that. So I'm going to go up here, and I'm just going to let me zoom it in a little bit deeper. But Homebrew is a package management system on OS X. They make it really easy to install things. If I want to install wget, I just do brew install wget. I don't have to worry about getting it from source. It's going to handle that for me. And it installs these packages in their own directories, links them up for me. It does a lot of the craft work. So you notice there's a lot of information, documentation to help you get along. But what I want you to just go way to the bottom of this page and look at the big install Ruby. That's the main one we're talking about doing. So you have this command here. You just run that, and you'll get Homebrew set up in your machine. Because it does say Ruby on it, there is further instructions if you don't have Ruby ready set up to do this. So you can just go to Homebrew wiki, and it will show you some other methods here to install it. because most likely you're already on 187, but we're upgrading to 193. So what you would do is, because when I run ruby-v, oops, you'll see I'm already on 193. But what I did is, first, since we're just installing brew, if I just run brew, you can already see if you set up. You'll have some example usage like this when you run the brew command. I'm not sure if there's a version. Let me run brew dash version. There is a version, so I'm running 093. But when I install it, I copied that command from that page, I paste it here, and I just press return, and it's going to fetch this homebrew, and it's going to execute it. And that's going to install it for you. But since it's already set up, I'm actually not going to, so I'm just commenting it out there. But that's it. Just run that command, press return, and it'll install it for you there. So if I even ran it now, you know, it's going to start doing some things, downloading it, but I'm going to cancel that. And that's it. Okay, and you'll notice here you have your install Homebrew. You can click here. It gives you some information, install it. But just running that one-liner is all you need. And then remember, after you get that Homebrew installed, run brew update and brew install this libksba library. That's important so we can move you up to 193. Okay, so we talked about Homebrew. Next on our list is we need to install RVM. And then we're going to look at OS X GCC installer, and then installing Ruby 193. So there's quite a little bit of things we have to do here to get you up there to that version. So Ruby Version Manager, that's what RVM is. That's the acronym. This is a command line tool that allows you to install, manage, and work with multiple Ruby environments. And Ruby environments, Ruby versions. It's a very nice tool. It allows you to let you run Ruby 1.8 and Ruby 1.9 concurrently. So let's go ahead and look at the page. We're going to go here to rvm.io. Okay, so I already have the browser set up here. Page, you know, they have this. There you go. Lost my browser there for a moment. So this is a Ruby version manager. You get a nice splash page. If you go down, you'll notice it has a visit the installation documentation. They have screencasts, so you can look at screencasts and see videos. And they have some things about Rails too. But first, I want you to just look at the introduction. They'll give you a little spiel about what it does. And then what we want to do is we want to just install it. That's the main thing. So they have a lot of great documentation here, but let's go ahead and just get right into it to installing this. So let's go ahead and click the you click the installation document. You'll see install RVM. And then there's a quick guide. Again, it's just like Brew, it's just a one-liner. We have a curl command, you can just copy that, paste that in your terminal, and get you set up on your way. Let's see. Let me close that now. So again, here's that command right there. You just run that at your terminal, press return, let it install. It'll take a little bit of time. And after that's set up, you have to update your bash profile. So in your relative directory, .bash profile, you need to include this line. It's all one line. What this line will do is it'll make sure that RVM is loaded when you open your terminal. So it loads RVM, which is very important for us. So if I got my terminal here, all I have to do is run this command, press return, it's going to install RVM. Again, it's already installed on my machine, but if I did RVM -- version, you'll notice this RVM 1.15.8. And let's see here. So after you do that, let's go to my bash profile. I added that line. So if I go to relative path / and just do run bash profile and press return, this is where you would paste that command from that slide. And you'll notice all this does is it gets that RVM set up on your machine. And then it runs source, so make sure it's loaded up on that terminal. Then you can go ahead and run RVM, and you'll see a lot of usage information there, and a lot of different things you can do with RVM here. So now that we have RVM set up, we have Brew installed. Now we need to set up this OSX GCC install. This again is something we need for Ruby 193. So you need to go to this link, and you just download the file there. Double click install it to your Mac OS machine, and it's going to be set up installed. So I go to that link here. Which one you want to choose? You want to choose the latest one, 10.7-V2. But you can also see that's for OSX versions 10.7 and up. If you're going to download OSX 10.6, then you choose the one right below that. You double click and install it. It'll download to your machine. You double click and then you install it from there. And that will install the OSX GCC installer there. So you're almost complete. We almost got it set up. We just need to get 193 going now. And now it's very easy. All you have to do is run this Ruby install 1.9.3. And that should get it going very easy. In your terminal, RVM install 1.9.3, return, let it load up. If you're on an older macOS version, if you're on Snow Leopard, you might have to, if you have any issues, to RVM reinstall 1.9.3 with GCC CLAN. And that should resolve any issues, because there's like some common bugs with Snow Leopard, so just run that and try it out. So after that, just run ruby-v. You see, if you see that Ruby 193, you're set. And you can also run that RVM-help to get a lot of usage information, to see commands you can use with RVM. Because what they do in RVM is you run RVM, and then you can run options here. And in these options, you can run different things. So the next one we're going to do after this is we're going to create a Gemset. So that's one of the options there. And you can actually change the Ruby version too. So, okay, now we're set up. We got RVM going. The next thing I want to do is I want to set up this Gemset. What this does is it encapsulates all of my different gems I have, all my different plugins into one area. And in this area, we're going to call it Educator. Let me show you that to you now. So RVM Gemset create Educator. And you see how I press return, it says Educator Gemset created. And then later on, I can just use RVM use Gemset Educator, and I go back to it. And looks like something. I think I just have to use RVM Gemset Educator. What's going on here? Import, yeah, RVM Gemset use Educator there. But what this does is if I do gem list, there's a list of gems here, and when I create a new gem set, it'll have a different list. So I were to do RVM gemset create educator 2, and I do RVM gemset use educator 2. You'll notice if I do gem list, it'll have a different set versus if I did RVM gemset use educator 1. They're both different containers with their own gems in it. Okay, so run that, test it out, run RVM, the Ruby version, and you should have your Ruby set up, your RVM set up, you got your Ruby 193, you got a gem set created as well. And all you do, set that as default. Run RVM use 1.9.3 at educator. So what this does is it sets up your gem set. It sets up Ruby 193, and then it defaults it. Makes this your default environment whenever you're developing. And the reason does that is that -- flag. And there you go. You have RVM set up. Now you have your environment set up, and now we can get to some cool things in Ruby. Start doing some development. We got the latest Ruby version going. You're getting kind of hacky. You're learning about Ruby, and you're getting really ingrained into it. So it's nice. So that's the end of this lesson, and I hope you enjoyed it. And move on with me to the next lesson, where we'll go on to deeper functionality into Ruby and start getting closer to doing some code.